There's no doubt that this year, this holiday season especially, many of us could use something uplifting and even therapeutic. Musician and vocal coach Emm Gryner's new book answers the call. The Healing Power of Singing, Raise Your Voice, Change Your Life is the title, and it brings Emm Gryner back to our airwaves tonight from St. Mary's in southwestern Ontario. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. It's so nice to speak to you. I'm one of those people that think that I am a good singer when I am in the shower, and depending on who's listening, it's not so much. But I thought it was so interesting. And the way you described yourself, you describe yourself this way from the book: a kid from the middle of nowhere whose voice sounded like it was trapped inside an elephant's anus, went on to become a great singer with pretty good experiences. So was part of the reason to write this book was a way to demystify what great singing is?
I think so. And, I make that joke, but I really feel that I've come a long way. And if someone with a kind of a rough voice, untrained, didn't know what she was doing, can go on to sing with people like Bowie, can get a record deal, can have a long career in music, I just really want people to know that it means that it's possible that anyone can do it.
You also write that, when it comes to singing, it's still one of those careers where people might not take it as seriously. They kind of put it in that hobby bracket.
Mhm.
But you want people to find power in their voice, correct?
Yes, and it's a great point that you raise because I think part of my storytelling in this book revolves around, when you become an artist or you become a singer or you decide to make that your career, you're automatically met with this disbelief that you can make a living at it. And to this day, I still get that, that feeling of mystification from people like, oh, you actually make a career at this, And I think that can really affect our choices. Like we can become that starving, struggling artist if we feel like that's what's expected of us and we start to just think that's our destiny. And I think the voice, I didn't realize this until I started to dive into writing the book, is such a mirror to how we are doing in life. There was a stretch where I really didn't honor my voice. I would go on stage, kind of like, have the scotch on the piano and just like, yeah, I can do this in my sleep. But I started to really key into being grateful for my gift. And if anyone should be grateful for their gift, it's me, who came from, the shores of Lake Huron. I joke that I was raised by wolves. And that's not really true, but there was nothing to do where I grew up, and all I wanted to do was have a voice and sing. So sometimes we forget our dreams along the way, and that's what the book is about, is rediscovering those long-standing dreams.
Through the book, you do share really personal stories, but you also give advice on how to become a better singer and the work that you have to put into it. You've had so many great opportunities, a major record deal, singing backup for David Bowie. You knew that was coming. Plenty of albums and collaborations. Does the secret lie also in just saying yes to the opportunities that you're presented with?
Yes and no. Is how I'm going to answer the question about saying yes. I think in the early days, saying yes really benefited me, and it benefits a lot of younger people because you have all of this energy and this blind faith to go out and do whatever it is that you want to do. At some point, though, I think you become more selective about saying yes, whether you just know more, you get a little bit more skeptical or cynical. But in my case, saying yes in the early days, and it doesn't have to do with youth necessarily. I think, let's say you've decided to start something brand new later in life. I really encourage people to just get out there and to really try to say yes to opportunities that seem scary, because it will provide more information for you in terms of deciding what to do next, or what feels right, or what am I willing to do? What do I want to put out there? And when I said yes to singing lessons, that was a game changer for me. When I said yes to singing with David Bowie, which was not in my plan in any way to be a backing vocalist in someone else's band. Those things gave me so much education and experience. So all of that adds up to being stronger in your life and in your voice.
And it's one thing to say yes to opportunities, but I think a lot of people kind of freeze up and don't do things because they're afraid. People are
Mm-hmm.
really afraid of failing because I think as a society, it's like if you fail, you're not worth anything. But you write in the book that failure is actually an opportunity. What's failure an opportunity for?
Well, it's an opportunity to feel all the feelings, right? I think in my case, I'm proud now of this sort of trial and error approach to having a career. So, I had a big record deal when I was 21. That was one of my dreams as a teenager to have that. And then I lost it very quickly after, due to a big merger that happened. That was out of my control, but it was still perceived as failure, like a lot of people in the music industry thought, oh, she's done, you know. I remember an agent I was working at the time just like asking someone, they didn't know I was listening, and they were like, how old is she now? And I was only 25. But at that point, they were thinking, oh, well, she's done. And there have been lots of like highs and lows along the way. So, with finances and then with a marriage going up in smoke. But after every one of those events, there is that opportunity to rebuild. So if you're going to settle into a victim mentality, you're going to stay there. It can be quite comfortable. I've been there, because it's easy to complain and it's easy to say, woe is me. But when you make the decision that that's not good enough for you, that's when opportunity starts to really come your way.
I used to work in the music industry, and it is the worst. I mean, 25, you're a child. Hello. But you mentioned that, when you got voice lessons, it changed your life. And you also say that voice training is like sports training. How?
Well, I was really lucky to work with a vocal coach. His name is Mitch Seekins. He's a big guy. Has been doing it for 30 years. It's his lifelong passion to be a teacher. And I was so lucky that it was his passion because it really infused my life with a sense of there's science behind the voice. Instead of it just being like, oh, I love to sing and it's like I love to dress up, there was a sense of really understanding the mechanics of the voice. And once you know the mechanics, then you can train as though you are an athlete. And the times where it really became apparent to me, this sort of parallel between the sports world and singing, was when I was sick. And I would come to my teacher and I would say, I have a show tonight. I don't have a voice. What am I going to do? And he would always say, well, think of yourself as an injured athlete. So, you're going to you could still do the show. You might not have the same power. You might not have the same expression, but it's still going to be okay. Or if it was really bad, you got to rest, right? And I think treating the voice with that same professional attitude and the same approach, right? So you're not just a singer on the day that you do your concert or your recording. You got to take care of it. You got to have water. You've got to,
Sleep.
have some kind of cardio. I mean, what do you do to get ready for these things?
Well, I know you have small kids, so one of the things you mentioned was sleep, and oh my gosh, I miss sleep so much. But there's probably a handful of people who can say they've had the chance to work with David Bowie, and you in the book write that you anticipate this question whenever you do interviews. What did that opportunity to work with him mean to you at the time?
Well, at the time, I think that it was just another chance to be out in the world because I had just been dropped from this major label. And then it was like, oh, we're going to Paris and we're going to Saturday Night Live and there's David Letterman. And then you'd meet all these rock stars along the way, like Annie Lennox and Mick Jagger. So I think at the time I was very much enjoying getting a glimpse of fame without having to be the center of attention. So that was a great gift. I think in hindsight, what I've taken away from it is much deeper. So it's less of like, oh, I was I got a taste of the big famous life, and more that I saw someone who was very influential, who was just at his core very excited about life, very curious, like fun, and was not really someone who took himself too seriously, which I felt was, for someone who was so influential to not take themselves seriously. I think he cared about his work, but we're in this era of celebrity and everything being so visual, and everyone's comparing and numbers and followers. And I know that his philosophy was it was more guided from within. And I think that that's really benefited me in recent years to realize that it's not just about like famous guy. He had highs and lows too, but he was, I think, at his happiest when he was following his inner, teenager kind of thing.
Because you did mention it in the book, and I know it's on the title. It's one of the subtitles on the book, What Touring with David Bowie. But in the book, you did mention that this becomes something that interviewers like myself are really interested in knowing, and maybe in the process of asking that question, the rest of your life and all the great things that you've done is eclipsed. How have you managed to reconcile that?
That's a great question, because it's like sort of the next level of that experience. It's less, a lot of people have asked, what was he like, But I think for a long time, the Bowie experience sort of was a cushion for my disappointment over not, seeing the record label deal through. I hadn't really dealt with it. It was a bit of like someone described it as like musician, like trauma that I was dealing with. And that's not to belittle what other people really go through in their lives. But I think it was a bit of not dealing with my dream not coming true. And what I learned through, touring with David and just nurturing my voice really came to head when I saw myself in this concert that we did called Glastonbury 2000. And I watched it when I was 42. And I saw my 25-year-old self on stage. And I just said, I didn't know where I had gone. I essentially felt like through being a mom and losing sleep, like you're talking about, and just life, I had lost a lot of that vitality. So I think the Bowie thing now is just a joy to accept as part of my story. Mm. And I don't mind when people ask about it now, because I guess I feel more confident about myself. I think when you're maybe wanting that limelight for yourself and you're not being asked about you, that's when it can get a little bit like, this doesn't feel good. But it's all part of it. And I feel like what I've written in the book actually will help people. And that's kind of my passion now, is just to put things out there for people that they can become inspired by, or they can interpret in their own way.
Well, we do have a clip of you performing on stage with David Bowie, and this is from Paris in 1999. Sheldon, could you please roll?
Let me slowly introduce you to my fellow artistes. On the very far end, come here, Em. This is Emm. Now, she can't speak French either, but she said that if I needed anybody to help translate, she would do it through interpretive dance, which I think is delightful. So I am very happy to be here. So every now and again, when I have a particularly difficult passage to translate, Em will do that for me.
I love that clip. It's so
Really?
Because you described yourself as somebody who was raised by wolves, and you came from a town where it's not on the map for musicians. But when you look back at that, you must think what? Because it's obvious that you two had a relationship.
Yeah, I felt very comfortable around him, and I think, we would talk a lot about bands, and would be, there are a lot of indie bands that we liked that were the same. We even went out to see some together in New York. We weren't buddy though. Like, let me make that clear. I wouldn't say that we're friends, But I think that way that he made me feel comfortable, on stage. I didn't know he was going to do that shtick on stage. So it's just, again, that having a laugh about stuff. And the fact that he'd take, it wasn't just me, he brought the other backing vocalist over after that and spotlighted her. And it was a glimpse actually of what he was like behind the scenes. He would always want people to be doing their own art and their own music. And I think he also got really excited when people, felt that they should now step into the spotlight. He felt like a lot of younger bands should kind of not take his place, but get that attention, and get that spotlight. And I loved that. I love that sort of, let's pass the baton, let's keep this spirit going. Yeah.
And, in the book too, you are a person that even when you meet roadblocks, you kind of find a way to work around them. You write about getting a role in this play around Joni Mitchell when you were dealing with something that was really heavy, but you worked really hard because you wanted to be prepared. And you write, beneath preparedness is something even more important, your why. Why is it important to define your path?
That's a great question. I think because you can get derailed so easily, things like my marriage ending, for example, came completely out of nowhere. Probably should have seen it coming, but I didn't see it coming. Things like the record deal going away, things like, some of the financial stuff I talk about in the book. If you know your why, I think it's a lot easier to bounce back from things like that. I'm going to say that I didn't know my why for a lot of those pitfalls. And it creates a bit of a roadmap, especially in a field where there really is no roadmap. Sometimes it's very clear when you're going into a field, what steps, what education you need to take, how you climb up the ladder. In music, there's no clear way, and it's very much based on external validation. So knowing how to balance that with what matters to you will get you through. And I talk in the book about, there are exercises about getting in tune with your values, which I didn't really take a look at that for a long time. So yeah, I think it's hard for people to articulate their purpose, but I do think we all have one. And it just takes a little bit of exploring to figure it out. And I encourage people, let's write it down. What are the things that bring you joy? And that can be a great sort of way to arrive at what is your why.
Yeah, I'm a believer that everybody has a purpose. I wanted to read a short excerpt from the book. So in the book you write, breathing in and breathing out, taking and giving back. It's not about us, it's about them. What is magical about the voice is the breath that lies beneath it, an invisible, omnipresent life force that makes something from seemingly nothing. On breath, we find the words of poets, the songs of survivors, the cries of injustice, or the wishes of a child. In the ultimate show, the body's gift for giving, the breath carries the voice perfectly. Like lovers and best friends carry one another through good, through bad, and through everything in between. But the breath should be a deep one. The voice should be full. The heart should give its all. So beautiful. It's not about us, it's about them. That's something that David Bowie said to you. You write early in the book that I wanted to teach as much as I wanted to be sprayed by a team of skunks right before a hot date. So in other words, you did not want to do it. How has teaching people to sing helped you to rediscover your breath and by extension, your voice?
That's a great question. I think the first thing that teaching taught me was to get past myself, because right in front of you, there's someone who wants to learn. And just like Mitch, my teacher, gave me that gift, I wanted to give people that gift. I didn't know that I wanted to give it to them until I started seeing that I don't know, they, like the people I taught, lit up. And also that I could teach them, that there was something that I had learned after 25 years that was worth sharing. And it is all rooted in breath. So my students, I don't have a whole lot of vocal students now. It's kind of evolved into life coaching, which is amazing. But it all comes back to learning how to tap into a deeper breath. And this seems so simple, like it's something that is with us all the time, but we don't always know how far we can explore it. And my dad taught me when I was really young, when I was having a hard time going to sleep, about belly breathing. And that kind of breathing does fuel a strong voice, and it also relaxes us, and it also makes, it helps us deal with worry and anxiety. So yeah, it's been a great gift to try to share that with people, and then also remember it in my own life.
You had a record deal pretty young, even though that record person was like, oh, she's done, she's finished. When you lost that record deal, I think a number of things could have happened. You could have walked away from the music industry, but you didn't. If you could tell yourself, your 20-year-old something self, what would you say now to her?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that my answer changes for this question. Right now, it is nothing. I would change nothing. Because the experiences that I went through really helped me get to where I am now. And I think that we're going to do what we're going to do anyway when we're younger, right? Like if someone tries to talk you out of it, you just immediately want to do it anyway. So all of the things that, happened, they might have had different outcomes, but, I dealt with them the way that felt natural to me. Do I wish I had some more tools? Maybe. So see, now the answer is changing already. But that's kind of where my book even comes into play, because I say to people, like, it took me 25 years to learn some of these secrets, not just about singing, but having an artist's life. And it can only take you, 4 hours or whatever it takes to read the book to learn. So I guess maybe having some more tools would have been great. Another perspective, and perhaps more women around me who I could trust to guide me. And I think we're starting to be in that era of real support. I'm hoping so anyway.
Well, you mentioned tools. I think this is a great tool for anybody. You share so much of yourself and your experiences, and the advice that you gave, I think is going to be very beneficial. Thank you so much for writing it. Congratulations and continued success. Thank you so much, Emm.
Thank you. Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.